The town of Brookvale looked peaceful from the outside. Quiet streets, smiling neighbors, and small cafes where everyone knew each other. But sometimes, the darkest stories hide behind the calmest places. Emily Carter was a 21-year-old college student. She worked evenings at a small cafe to pay for her studies. Emily believed the world was mostly good. She trusted people easily, and she dreamed of becoming a journalist one day. Every night after work, she walked through the same street toward the parking lot. It was usually quiet, safe, until one night, everything changed. The cafe had closed late. Rain was falling lightly, and the streets were empty. Emily walked toward her car, holding her bag tightly. Suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned around. Standing under the streetlight was Richard Hale. Everyone in Brookvale knew that name. Richard Hale was rich, powerful, and respected. He owned half the businesses in town and donated large amounts to charity. People called him the pride of Brookvale. But that night, Emily saw a completely different side of him. Richard approached slowly, his smile cold and disturbing. Emily felt something was wrong. She tried to leave, but he blocked her path. What happened next destroyed Emily's sense of safety forever. When it was over, Emily was left shaking, broken, and terrified. But she still believed the truth would protect her. The next morning, she went to the police. Her voice trembled as she explained everything. But instead of support, she saw doubt in their eyes. Richard Hale was too powerful. The officers said there wasn't enough evidence. They suggested she might be confused. Emily felt like the ground disappeared beneath her feet. She tried telling people in town. But the whispers began. Richard would never do something like that. Maybe she misunderstood. Some even accused Emily of lying for attention. The town that once felt like home suddenly felt like a prison. Emily stopped going out. She left college. And eventually, she left Brookvale completely. For months, she felt lost. But slowly, something inside her began to change. Emily realized something important. If the system refused to protect victims, someone had to expose the truth. Instead of giving up, she decided to become stronger. She moved to another city and started studying law and digital investigation. Her goal was simple. One day, she would make the truth impossible to ignore. Years passed. Emily worked harder than ever. She learned how criminals hide evidence. How powerful people silence victims. How secrets can stay buried for decades. But Emily was patient. Meanwhile, Richard Hale's life only improved. He became even richer. He opened new companies and funded public projects. Brookvale built a park in his name. People praised him as a hero. But Emily never forgot that rainy night. 5 years later, she returned to Brookvale. But she was not the same frightened girl anymore. She was confident, focused, and prepared. Emily didn't confront Richard immediately. Instead, she began investigating quietly. She reviewed old news articles, police records, and local rumors. Soon, she discovered something disturbing. Her case wasn't the only one. Several women had filed complaints about Richard in the past. But every case had mysteriously disappeared. Some victims had moved away. Others were too afraid to speak. Emily knew she had to find them. One by one, she tracked them down. At first, the women were scared. They had been ignored before. But Emily promised them something powerful. This time, the truth will be heard. Slowly, they began sharing their stories. Each story sounded painfully similar. The same manipulation, the same threats, the same silence afterward. Emily collected everything. Old messages, witness statements, hidden payments made by Richard to silence victims, security footage from businesses near the cafe. Every small detail became a piece of the puzzle. Months passed. Emily built a case stronger than anything the town had ever seen. But she knew exposing Richard locally wasn't enough. He still had too much influence. So she made a bigger plan. Emily contacted national journalists, legal experts, and several organizations that supported victims. Then she waited for the perfect moment. That moment came during Brookvale's annual charity gala. It was the biggest event of the year. The entire town gathered to celebrate Richard Hale's generosity. He stood on stage, smiling proudly as cameras flashed. Just as he began his speech, everything changed. Screens across the hall suddenly turned on. A video began playing. It showed testimonies from multiple victims. Documents proving secret payments. Evidence connecting Richard to years of abuse. The room fell silent. People stared in shock. Richard's confident smile disappeared. Within minutes, journalists started broadcasting the story live. Social media exploded. The truth spread faster than anyone expected. Richard tried to deny everything. He called it a conspiracy. But the evidence was overwhelming. More victims came forward. The police had no choice anymore. That same night, officers arrived at the gala. In front of the entire town, Richard Hale was arrested. For the first time in years, Emily felt something she hadn't felt before. Relief. Months later, the trial began. The courtroom was packed with reporters. Victims finally had a chance to speak. Their voices were strong, their stories undeniable. Richard's lawyers tried every trick to defend him. But the evidence Emily collected was too powerful. Finally, the judge announced the verdict. Guilty. Richard Hale was sentenced to decades in prison. The man once called the pride of Brookvale was now remembered for his crimes. After the trial, reporters surrounded Emily outside the courthouse. Microphones and cameras pointed toward her. One reporter asked the question everyone was thinking. Emily, after everything that happened, does this feel like revenge? Emily paused for a moment. Then she looked directly at the cameras and said calmly, "This was never about revenge. This was about justice." For years, people tried to silence the truth. But the truth always finds a way to be heard. With that, Emily walked away from the courthouse. Not as a victim, but as someone who turned pain into strength. And in the quiet town of Brookvale, people finally understood something important. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply revealing the truth.